Welcome back, Street Smart Podcast. I'm here with Chad Robichaux, which, again, I'm trying very hard not to fanboy out because, just really, really, I remember watching you fight in MMA, and that's where I knew your name from. And then, lo and behold, the rest of your story is amazing. So thank you so much for taking time to sit with us and have a conversation.
No, thanks, and thanks for coming here.
This place is great. I know this is a temporary facility. You guys are broke ground out on 105 near Lake Conroe.
Yeah.
And you guys are on how many acres out there?
We're on 4 acres. We're going to build a 12,000 square foot. That's be our international headquarters, and then inside of it we'll have a really killer studio.
That's great.
Yeah.
Are you going to put a jiu-jitsu gym in it?
Well, not really a jiu-jitsu gym, but we're going to have some mats in the gym area. We want to have a workout area where some of our alumni in the area could feel comfortable to have a place to go work out at.
Sure.
Not be in a busy gym, and then we have. I mean, I'm not the only black belt on our staff. We have like 5 black belts that work for Mighty Oaks, and just coincidental. It never was intentional, but so just a place to get on the mats and train as well.
Mighty Oaks, the most dangerous nonprofit on the planet.
Yeah. We had some pretty guys with some amazing military backgrounds, obviously, but yeah, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, we got some studs in jiu-jitsu.
Were they black belts when they got here, or did you help that?
No, I think a mix, but none of them started jiu-jitsu and got a black belt from here. I mean,
okay.
All of them, one of them, my son, Hunter, who works here, he's been training with me since he was could walk, or before he could walk probably. But so he's got a black belt. John Davis runs our first responder side of our program. I met him when he was a purple belt, and now he's got his black belt under myself and Tom Cronin at Cross and Gracie. Reed Hastie's out of Oklahoma is one of our team leaders, and he's got a black belt, and then we have a couple other guys as well.
Jeez.
Dustin Schellheimer, who's came out and actually, you know what? Dustin came to Mighty Oaks. He was like 300 something pounds, like 350, really overweight, and not healthy at all. Had no physical activities. During his week at Mighty Oaks, we went out to the gym and trained, and so he started jiu-jitsu through Mighty Oaks. He was like, "Hey, I love this. I want to go." So he was going back to West Texas, and he's like, "Is there a gym where I live?" And Bruno Bastos was.
Oh, he lives in Midland.
Yeah, he lives in Midland. So I'm like, "Man, Bruno's like in your town. Like that's where you need to train." And so in every year, he lost in the first 6 months. He lost like 100 pounds, and then he won worlds and pans at every belt level.
Oh wow!
And then he just got his black belt. So there's one from Mighty Oaks, white belt to black belt.
That's amazing. I was born and raised in Midland. It's funny that when Bruno has a great school out there.
Yeah.
And he's obviously Bruno is, he's known, right? He's a competitor and everything, and that's funny. That's great though that you have that you can claim him as a homegrown black belt. It'll change your life, and I know that you have spoken at length about what it did for you. Obviously, when you got back from Afghanistan and those types of things. I'd love to get into that, and I really run the risk of this episode becoming almost all exclusively jiu-jitsu because you know how it gets. You can sit down and it turns up quick. But one of the things I wanted to start with was when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
An astronaut. I mean, every adventurous kid wants to be an astronaut.
Sure.
No, I do, and I say that jokingly, but I did. I remember wanting to be an astronaut. I always had like a love for adventure, but probably more in my early, like maybe like as young as 12 years old to like 13 years old. That time frame was the military picked up my interest. So at a young age, military picked up my interest, and came in a weird way because my family served for 84 years now. All the way back World War II, Korea, Vietnam. I did 8 tours to Afghanistan. My son did a deployment to Afghanistan, so 84 years, and 54, that's from the Marine Corps. But my dad was like not a very great person. He was a very dysfunctional human being, like angry, violent guy. And but the only thing that ever made my dad happy was the fact that he was a United States Marine. And I think something about that like made it like you can have like this dark environment and then this like even a spark like so bright, and that's how I was like looking at my dad and how just dark of a person he was, but the one bright thing in his life was his pride in the fact that just for a few years of his life he was a United States Marine, and he always just, and I'm like, man, I think that's what I want to do.
There must be something to that.
Something to that, and so I always wanted to be in the military from that young age.
But you didn't do the military straight away, though. You were a police officer.
Actually, no, I did the military first.
Oh, okay.
And then I went. So I went in the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. And I'll take a step back. When I was 13 and did decide to join, I had a brother who's a year older than me, and the two of us decided to do it together. It was kind of like, one, we want to join the military, but two, we grew up in this real dysfunctional environment, so we wanted to get away from that environment.
It was a
way out, yeah. And both of us did martial arts. I started when I was 5, and so that was the one positive thing in my life. And so we were both athletes from being, doing judo and traditional jiu-jitsu, and so we wanted to, and then being in southern Louisiana, you're out in the swamp, in the bayous, playing military.
You're from Louisiana? I mean, your last name's Robichaux. I wasn't quite sure, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, there was that, and then I think I was 13, he was like 14, and we saw this video of these Navy SEALs, and this Navy SEAL was like coming out of the water with like his face was painted green, he had a boonie hat on, an M16 rifle, and seaweed hanging off him, these two 2080 scuba tanks on his back, and I'm like, I want to do that.
I want to do that.
Yeah. That's what I want to do, but I didn't want to join the Navy. And I wanted to be a Marine, so I learned about Marine Recon and Marine Force Recon, like particularly the unit 3rd Force Recon, which ultimately ended up serving in eventually in Vietnam. And I started reading these books about these Recon Marines in Vietnam, and I became infatuated with it.
Sure.
And so my brother and I trained at that early age when I was 13. Even in Louisiana, no one taught me about health or fitness, whatever, but I stopped drinking sodas, I started drinking water, I started eating right, stopped eating candy. Like, I don't know where I even picked up that concept from, but I started being healthy, and I started running and swimming, and about a year into that, my brother was shot and killed. So it was, it was like extremely devastating for me and the little bit of family I had, but I made this commitment to do that, and I stuck with that through that depression and isolation, and my family fell apart. And when I was about 15 years old, my dad couldn't handle the grieving mother anymore, so he left, and ended up, me and my older sister, who was about 20 at the time, ended up living alone, the two of us. And I probably wasn't going to graduate high school because I was trying to work and do it at the same time. And so I went to Marine Corps recruiter, and I just told him my story and how I wanted to be a Recon Marine. And he helped me get in without a high school diploma. I was 17 years old, 1993, which is even then you couldn't get in without a high school diploma. But he wrote a hardship letter to the Marine Corps and got me in, and I got an infantry contract and went to Marine Corps boot camp at 17, and then ultimately I went to infantry school, and then after that I went to 29 Palms, California, and kept my promise to him that I get my GED, and I got my GED. All these years later, I have MBA, and I joke a lot when I speak. I'm like, I can't spell MBA, but I got one.
Yeah, that's right.
but so that's how I went in the Marine Corps. And that first year, I tried out to be a Recon Marine, and that was my promise that I felt like it felt like it was a promise I had to my brother. And I made it the first. It's, if anybody knows anything about Marine Recon, it's like the rest of special operations, like 80% attrition rate. So it's very difficult, especially at the young age. But I made it through, and lots of great jobs in the military. But to me, there's probably not a job that fit me more. Combat scuba diving and jumping, and I love skydiving still. And I went to military free fall school, and I eventually became a Halo team leader. And so doing that job was like the best fit for me, but I did that 4 years of active duty, and then I decided I was gonna stay in because I got married. I've been married 27 years now. I got married, had my oldest son Hunter, and I'm like, man, if I'm gonna make this a career, I probably should go to college and become an officer. So I went back to Louisiana. I joined the reserve unit in Mobile, Alabama, 3rd Force Recon Company, and then while I was going to college, I became a police officer. So that's the 4 years I was a police officer.
Okay.
And it was during that time, during that 4-year period, where those planes flew in those World Trade Center buildings, and I knew I was, even as a reservist at 3rd Force Recon Company, being in that type of special operations unit, I'm like, we were going to get deployed, and I didn't even wait. I resigned from being a police officer, went on active duty right away, went on active orders in my command, and it was a period after that, but I eventually got deployed. I tried out for a JSOC task force, the Joint Special Operations Command Task Force, and went in that capacity, and ultimately ended up doing 8 deployments to Afghanistan.
And all 8 as an active duty Marine, or?
I went as a Marine, but I went at a JSOC task force. I went to a Navy unit. Okay. It was a Naval Special Warfare unit that led that task force. And so there was a couple of Force Recon Marines that went there. People in JSOC, people from all the different other special operations, but it was an NSW, SEAL-led task force.
Yeah, but my point was you weren't there as a civilian contractor. You were there as a military asset.
I went there originally as a Marine, and then towards the end I was a contractor. I actually stayed at that same command, in that same job actually. I didn't want to leave the command, and I would have had to leave, so I chose to stay there, and I got a contract directly with that command.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing. And it's funny you talk about that SEAL commercial that you saw, and I have a friend that's a Green Beret, actually lives in Spring now. But he calls that the SEAL reveal, and he says it's very compelling. That coming out of the water is the SEAL reveal.
Yeah, they did such a good job of marketing, and they got all the, but there's lots of great special operations jobs out there that a lot of people don't even know about, and at that time, not a lot of people knew about Marine Recon, and or even SF, Army SF, the Green Berets. Like back then, everything was Navy SEAL and that Charlie Sheen. I
was going to ask if you remembered that movie. That movie was terrible.
Oh yeah.
If you watch it now, I remember watching it when it came out and thinking, "This is the greatest movie ever made."
Yeah, it was.
And it was not. And it does not hold up at all. So
I need to go back and watch it now.
You'll be extremely disappointed. At least I was for sure. But yeah, so that's it. And I didn't know that you'd actually gone active duty Marine. I thought that you'd a police officer first. So. So the World Trade Center stuff happens. You get ready. You deploy 8 times. And how did your deployments end? When did you come back and not go back again?
April of 2007.
Okay.
April of 2007. The deployments were hard.
Sure.
The reason I did a lot of deployments wasn't because, and I always want to say this, like when you're a JSOC, your deployments are typically like 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people might think 8 deployments at 15 months. That's not what we did.
We were there forever.
So usually like 3 to 6 months. So that was like the average on our deployments. We come home like 3 months and you're back again. So it's very rapid. And the reason why is because, most conventional forces, they'll go out there for 9, 12, 15 months, but they're on base most of the time and they'll go off base every once in a while. Where, in special operations community, particularly at JSOC and our task force, like, in those 8 deployments, I probably spent 2 weeks on a base.
The rest of the time you're out.
Yeah. So you have to like come back, kind of recharge, and it's not like you're doing a different operation each time. Like all 8 of my deployments was one operation. I was like, going home and then have to get back out there. So it's like not separate. It's like, hey, on this deployment we did this, and you come home, and on this deployment we're going to do something totally different. It was the same operation.
Sure. Okay. So it was just an extended operation that you would go back and forth and just continue to support.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so it's really interesting. When I was going through your history and looking through, kind of listening to a couple things and preparing a bit, you could say that you've lived like a bunch of different lives, right? So the military life, and then you were a police officer for a bit, and then back in the military, and then in the civilian area, MMA fighter, fighting for some of the biggest promotions, and at the time you were fighting for Strikeforce and Bellator, and those promotions, they were definitely competing with UFC in terms of competition level and status. So, do you ever look back on it that way, or is it just that as you were doing that throughout your life, you're just like, well, this is what I'm doing now?
Yeah, it just always seemed kind of normal, like what I was doing now. It never seemed like a huge deal. In fact, when I was fighting in Strikeforce, it was owned by the UFC.
Oh, that's right.
My contract was a Zuffa contract, I think. Yeah. It was. But for me, Marshal, I never grew up and was like, I want to be an MMA fighter. Like right now, no kids are like growing up and they like watch UFC and they're like, I want to be George St. Pierre. I want to be Khabib. Like that wasn't ever the case for me. Like I started in martial arts when I was 5 years old, and I competed in martial arts my whole life. And then I competed in this event, and then one day, I'm in a boxing ring in a warehouse in Louisiana, and we got some little, foam gloves on, or sometimes no gloves, and punch each other head or slap each other head. It was just a progression of competing. I never thought like, oh, now I'm doing MMA.
Yeah, now I'm doing this.
Yeah, and then I actually had done a couple of pro fights before I realized I was even licensed as a pro fighter. Like I was fighting in Louisiana, and like, oh well, this fight had actually somebody from the state there, and they actually had an ambulance and a doctor, which was really cool. And then I'm like, oh, that means it was sanctioned, and now it's
Now you're a pro fighter.
Now you're a pro fighter. Like, it was very different when I started. My first amateur fight was in '97. My first professional fight was in '99. The sport was really just developing there. And as a jiu-jitsu guy and a grappler, it was kind of like cheating, because I'd fight a taekwondo guy, and that taekwondo guy had no idea.
No, a buddy of mine who's also a Marine, actually, he's a black belt in taekwondo, and someone asked us one time, and this was when I was a blue belt, who would win the fight, and his answer was, well, I better land the kick. And I said, because I'm going to get you to the ground, and it'd be horrible for you. But, when you were fighting, especially, and jiu-jitsu now, obviously, MMA is really interesting how it's changed over the years. You got people that are training MMA now. They're not.
Right.
You don't have, hey, this guy's a boxer and this guy's a jiu-jitsu guy. We'll see what happens. But when you did, it's almost like you had a magic wand that you were waving over the ring, like, and it's over.
So I would literally like waiting for the gun to fire off and sprinting in a 500-yard dash.
Right.
Like, I would, when the referee would say go, I'd sprint across that ring and try to jam them in the corner before they could ever get going.
Get them to the ground and then just grind them out.
Yeah, I did not want that guy to get in the middle of the ring and have to strike with them. My striking was terrible back then.
Well, I would like to point out you do have a KO, and it was I think it was your last fight.
Well, it's on my record as a KO, but technically they put KO because I choked him unconscious. Oh. So they put KO. That was Andrew Yates, and
that doesn't count as a KO.
Yeah, it's
That's
not a KO.
just
It's
a submission by choke.
Yeah. I think mixedmartialarts.com has me as 18-2 with 17, but 17 of those wins would have been submissions and one decision, which would have been my strike force here in Houston at the Toyota Center.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. And what's one thing I don't think people realize is the, and again, this is an entrepreneurial podcast. When you are a mixed martial artist, you are the company. Like, it's you, and so. When you're doing that and you start realizing, oh man, I'm making money doing this. Did you think of it as a business at that time, or did you think of it as like, man, I'm just a pro athlete?
Yeah, so when I came home from Afghanistan, because of the fact that I'd switched to a contractor, my career was over. I was diagnosed with PTSD. I was read out of my program. I could not deploy anymore. I needed to do something to take care of my family, and what I was good at was being a Force Recon Marine,
tearing some things up,
and jiu-jitsu, and that was the two things I felt good at, and I just finished my MBA, and I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, I think we're going to open a jiu-jitsu gym, and so when I opened the jiu-jitsu gym, I think the Ultimate Fighter was just around that same time. This is 2007. I couldn't tell you exactly when Ultimate Fighter, but I know it's a big thing around that time. I knew that if I was going to be successful running a martial arts school, from my eyes, and everybody might not agree with this, from my eyes, I needed to be able to represent myself as an athlete, professional athlete. I wanted people to want to come train with me because I could prove that I was a successful martial artist, not just say I was.
Sure.
And so I knew I needed to get back into that cage and fight. And at the time, I was undefeated, and so there was this desire to compete. I've always had the desire to compete, but I also looked at it as a business holistically, not just me as a business as a professional athlete, but me as a school owner. Those two were one and the same to me. And,
so you were almost using your mixed martial arts career as a marketing campaign for your gym.
I was, and and I think a lot of fighters either do that or they retire and then try to open a gym later. And but to me, like at the time, the fighting wasn't going to make enough money to live on at that time. It's not like now. Even now,
well, unless you're a champion now, you don't make great money.
You're not making great money. Even if you go into UFC, you might make $10,000 and $10,000, $20,000 if you win.
Right, and then you got to pay your team and
you got to pay your team and your training and your meals and your all kind of stuff. And if you go into camp, going to traveling to go to a camp. Even in best case scenario, your first year in the UFC, if you win 3 fights, you're probably looking at $60,000 minus expenses. Right. You're not making.
You're not making much.
Not making much. Not with gas at $5 a gallon, right?
Sure.
So for me, like back then, even my highest payday was like I made $30,000.
Yeah.
And for a fight, but most of the fights were like $5,000, or under, and so I had to have a gym to be able to support me fighting. But so the profitability from a business standpoint, from an entrepreneur standpoint, the profitability was fighting and using that platform as a fighter to have people trust me to teach them jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
And that's why it was very important, not just to win,
but how I won. Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu, I always wanted to represent jiu-jitsu. I'm a jiu-jitsu person. I mean, I wasn't going to avoid a knockout, but I certainly would rather choke someone out or get him in a leg lock or armbar because it showed my jiu-jitsu. And so I'm very proud of the fact that out of my 18 wins, as a jiu-jitsu guy, I got 17 submissions.
Well, I mean, let's just call it what it is. The one they're saying is a knockout. You choked the guy unconscious.
I choked him unconscious.
So I mean, it's still jiu-jitsu, right? It's a north-south choke.
North-south pillow choke. Yeah, I put him unconscious with that. I felt like I represented jiu-jitsu well, and people wanted to learn my jiu-jitsu because of that. And so I used MMA, although I love competing, I used MMA as my platform to build students. And so when I opened my school right there on Rayford Sawdust, not far from where we are right now, this was just a few months after Afghanistan, like October, August, September, maybe September-ish of 2007.
And you cycled out in April, you said, right?
Yeah.
So just a few months.
It was a few months. It was super quick. I had to take care of my family, and I put a little mobile mini thing out front. I put Train Like an Ultimate Fighter on the banner, and I had a guy in MMA, and then I put that little mobile mini out, and I started selling. We had almost 300 memberships sold before I opened the doors to that gym.
Oh man! And how much of a relief was that?
It was huge. I mean, it was to me to be able to take care of my family and be able to do something I love. I'm like, man, this is going to be great. And within 3 years, we had almost 1,000 students.
Man, that's great.
Which is incredible. I mean, I don't even know if you could do that right now, and if I could do that right now, because it was the right timing for me. I put a lot of work into it. I treated it like a business, which I don't think a lot of martial arts schools treat them like businesses. They treat them like a club. I treat it like a business, and I was on the mats teaching, which is very important. A lot of people open a school, especially a lot of fighters open a school, and they're worried about them fighting, and have someone else teach, have their blue. So I was always on the mats teaching. I just worked really hard to make sure that I was building. At the time, you open a school right now, you're gonna have all kind of people from everywhere.
Sure.
When I opened the school and had like 300 students out of the gate, I'm like, this is a mount.
Yeah.
This is side control. This is the guard.
Right.
And, okay, now today we're gonna teach you how to move from the guard to side control. And then we teach you how to move from the guard to side control, and here's a key lock.
And this was also before. Now you get a lot of people that come in and they'll have it. They've either watched UFC or something like that, and they think they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or YouTube. They can watch these videos on YouTube, and half the time you're missing a lot of the detail, but. Yeah, even then you're talking people just off the street going, what is this jiu-jitsu thing? Let's try that.
Yeah, we just really invested in that school. And one of the things, as I started winning more fights, I had the opportunity to go train at the time. Greg Jackson's was very big, Extreme Couture, and I did go to train with Randy later on. But at that time, I wanted to train at my gym. I felt like for me, I was like, I could go to these camps, but if I'm going to win fights, I want to win fights with the people I train with every day.
Out of my gym.
Yeah, out of my gym. Yeah. And so I chose to stay there. Lewis Wood, who's a great boxing coach from this area, myself, Yves Edwards, Tim Cordor, Rocky Long, he was coaching all of us in boxing, and Jody Trantham was a great wrestling coach here. So all people from this area trained us to fight. Todd Moore, fought in Dream, fought Shinya Aoki in Dream around that time. We were all training together and just really, really some tough guys, and out of that group of people, out of that initial group of students I had, Jared Chafee, who's a black belt under me, who fought in Bellator, had a great run. You had Alex Morano, who's Alex Morano started with me when he was 15 years old, and now he owns that gym. Yeah. And he's he's a ranked guy in the UFC right now, and he's doing really well. And Ricky Tercio started. He was I think he was 13 years old, and now he won the Ultimate Fighter. All those guys came out of that initial group back in 2007.
There's a great group of fighters right now coming out of the Houston area. It's pretty fun to watch, and maybe the most entertaining one right now is Derek Lewis, but his Instagram is hilarious. But anyway, and one thing I didn't know about you when I started looking into this is you also have a black belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu, correct?
Yes. Yeah. That's what started when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I actually went to my grandmother, seeing what was going on in my home, and she just wanted something positive in my life, and she Raceland, Louisiana, which you've never been to Raceland, Louisiana. Right across from Central Lafourche High School was this and the building's still there. It's like a little A-frame building. On the second floor was this taekwondo school, and that's where they dropped me off when I was 5 years old. My grandmother knew nothing about martial arts, and I was in this school, and they had this small group of people doing judo, and I was 5 years old, so I can't recall, but my grandmother and my mom says I was gravitated towards that, and I went train with these guys doing judo. And from judo, I did Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo, all the way growing up. And then I went in the Marine Corps in 1993. And 1995, all my recon training had finally settled down, and I'm like, okay, I have to get back into martial arts. So I did my whole life, and I saw this sign at the base gym that said jiu-jitsu, but it was spelled different. Than I spelled, and I didn't think anything of it. And I went to train, and it was these blue belts from Torrance, California, from the Grace University in Torrance, California, and I'm thinking blue belts teaching that makes sense to me, and I got rolled up and embarrassed, and I think when people get rolled up and embarrassed when they get introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they have two reactions. One is I never want to feel like that again, or two is I have to learn that.
I can't let that happen ever again.
I want to whatever they just did, I want to learn, and that was my reaction as a martial artist. Is I want to learn this, and so in 1995 I began my journey with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's been a long time now, but
my journey with it is funny. My youngest daughter, who's now she's 16, she's a junior in high school at Conroe. Actually, she wrestles for the school, and she was 8 at the time, and we were living in Fort Worth, and she just seen Ronda Rousey fight, and she goes, I want to do that. And I was like, okay, whatever. And she gets on and finds a school in the Keller area, a guy named Paul Halme, who owns Peak Performance. And he's a Travis Lutter black belt.
Yeah.
And she goes, we were living in Keller, so she says, I want to go here. And I was like, okay. So we go there. She starts competing, doing well. And I remember she didn't do well in one tournament. She got stuck on bottom, and I wasn't training. And I remember telling her after the tournament, you got to get up. You can't be down. And she's 8 or 9 years old, right? So she tells me, she says, I don't want to sound rude to you right now, but you don't do this, and you don't know how hard that is. And so that next Monday, I went in and trained and had a white belt that maybe been training 6 months hold me down. He felt like he weighed 400 pounds, and my response was, well, that can't happen again. That's ridiculous. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen and it seems like a lot of times it's first responders and law enforcement that come in, get rolled up, and they never come back. And it's got to be just a pride thing. I don't know.
Yeah, just embarrassed, and they don't want to experience being exposed like that. I think, especially men have that. It's this ego that, like I said, that's usually two responses. And
it definitely rip it away from you. And you just got stem cells, right?
I did.
And so the rumor I heard after that was that you're going to restart your MMA career, right?
With the 47-year-old come back. Yeah.
At least that's the rumor I'm going to start anyway.
It's I've been on the mats a lot. Like I said, I just started in 90. Started 42 years ago on the mats, but now Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 95, and then I just last year or maybe a year and a half ago now I got my 4th degree black belt from Carlson Gracie Jr. and that's who the team I represent now, and I've been under Carlson. I started off, I got my black belt originally under Dave Vieira, Draculino, the Gracie Baja guys, and then Draculino's such an amazing human being, and then I moved to California and going there wasn't a Gracie Baja where it was, and Draculino was very close to Carlson Gracie Jr., and so I went under Carlson Gracie Jr. and have been, but I've got my 3rd and 4th degrees under him, and he's become a great friend, and I still, by the way, I still am very close to Draculino. We're very tight still, but all those years on the mats, 20 MMA fights, 8 deployments to Afghanistan, jumping out of airplanes and crashing, been in a few helicopter crashes. I broke my neck in Afghanistan. Like, my body's
been through some things.
Been through some things and pretty banged up, and I started feeling like pain, like the joint pain and stuff like that. Just felt like that's just life. Like,
this is I made the comment the other day. My shoulder, the 87% is the new 100%.
Yeah,
so I guess that's where we are.
And then a couple months ago, I did this carnivore diet, and I felt the inflammation. I started feeling the inflammation go away, and I'm like, man, there is like a path to healing. And I have my own podcast that I was on. I had been talking to a lot of people about the stem cell, and there's a CEO named Eric Scoffers that's the CEO of BioAccelerator down in Colombia, and Colombia and Panama are the two kind of leading places in stem cell technology, and the UFC sends people down to BioAccelerator in Colombia, and I I just wanted to know, like, when I would interview Eric Scoffers, I wasn't like promoting them. I was just like, what is this? Why is it different?
Sure.
Why is stem cell different in the United States, and the PRP and stem cell and umbilical stem cell technology from Colombia and what they're doing in Panama, and why is it not allowed in the United States? And what's the magic, thing about why are people willing to pay so much money and travel down there to do it? And the answers we're getting was like, it just really intrigued me. And so I spent like 2 years vetting it out. And then it wasn't until the carnivore diet and I actually found that relief, how much relief I got from the lack of information, that I made the decision to go down there. And I went down to Colombia, and they totally took care of me. In fact, right before I left, Usman had just left. Yeah, Kamal Usman had just left. And then right when I was leaving, I think Bobby Lashley showed up. So they have a really good. Chris Cyborg's been down there. TJ Dillashaw, Henry Cejudo go to the bioaccelerator down in Colombia, and man, first of all, I'll say, like, from a level of like, it was like complete red carpet concierge treatment. Sure. Never seen that in the medical industry here in the United States. Right. You're spending like hours with the doctor, not 7 minutes. Like, you get ask questions, and like got a neuroscientist like talking to me about what they're going to do to me, and spent the whole week down there, and I was expecting to walk away with like lightning bolts, like Bosch Say, coming out of your fingertips, and that wasn't the case for me. It like knocked me in my butt.
Really?
Because I a couple of things. One, I got a lot of stem cells. I got 280 million stem cells put in me, all straight umbilical cord stem cells. I did my wrist, my elbow, my groin, my hip. I busted my groin right before we did the Afghan evacs last year, and I think we're going to talk about that.
Absolutely.
But and as I got my groin done, my hip done, both my shoulders, the scapulas, and the rotator cuffs, and then my neck, where I had my neck break. And then they did a intravenous, so they did like 150 million stem cells through intravenous, and then they did 50 million stem cells in my spinal fluid for TBI, for brain injuries from explosions in Afghanistan, and then just getting punched and kicked in the head for a lot of times.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah, so my CAT scan shows a lot of dead spots in my brain. So they actually. They have the guy's like a neuroscientist doctor, like, and before you put fluid into your spinal cord, you have to extract that amount. I didn't know this. It's pretty crazy. They have to extract the amount of fluid, because if they add some, it's overpressure, and
it's a closed system.
Yeah. So they first they extract that spinal fluid, and then they put that fluid back in with the stem cells in it. You could watch it.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, the technology is super awesome. And watching it on the what they call it, the ultrasound. Yeah. And so you see this 8-inch needle going down your spinal cord, and it's just pretty crazy. And then it's actually not a lot of pain, but that you go back and sleep 6 hours, and the next day, like, I couldn't touch my knees. Like,
you're like, I made a mistake.
I was so stiff, and so you had that stiffness. And then, and so I was really stiff. I was really tired. Felt like I had the flu. And then I came home, and then I had these body aches and cramps, which is actually the proper response. Your body, your immune system's like, especially if you're healthy, your immune system's saying like, hey, man, this is this something's going on here, and it really like triggered this response. So like, it knocked me in my butt for like a week, but then after that, I just had this like mental clarity come over me. Oh wow! And this energy come. I felt like, and since then, it's been a couple of weeks now. I have not felt. So groin, hip, elbow, both wrists, both shoulders. The only thing I felt a little bit in this wrist, which was a more recent injury, but everything else I feel like zero pain, zero inflammation, zero pain.
That's awesome.
And that's it's not even supposed to, probably overselling it, because it's not even, you shouldn't even get that result that fast. But I just don't. I don't have any inflammation or pain in it. And then I shout out to that company BioAccelerator, because they want to work with me to help get veterans in there at their cost pro bono, like get some veterans in there with spinal cord injuries and TBI. And there was one guy there that he was in a wheelchair, and he had broke his neck and was paralyzed from the waist down, and that was a 6th trip there. And his first trip, he could only move the muscles in his face. And now he drives his wheelchair. He could drink water. He could eat. He could use the bathroom. He could hold his baby. Shook my hand, so. So he. When he started treatment, he couldn't move his arms. He could only like flinch the muscles in his face.
And now he's holding his baby and shaking her hand.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, it is a absolute disgusting crime that this technology is not allowed
Yeah,
in the
it
United
really
States.
it is absolutely, and we could probably spend another 5 hours talking about why, but yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad you're getting some relief out of that. I know, man, I've trained for a little over 8 years, almost 9 years now, and I've that accelerated arthritis in the hands and all that stuff, and you're like, just gnarled up, and it's so I get it, and that's great. What's interesting though, and getting now into sort of the nonprofit space, when did you decide, hey man, something needs to be done for veterans that are suffering from PTSD? And obviously you had challenges with it, and major challenges with it.
Yeah.
And help me walk through the process of like, man, something needs to be done here. And then what made you decide I'm the one that's going to do it?
Yeah. Well, so at the time, I came back from Afghanistan, diagnosed with PTSD. That 3 years of starting that gym and having the success of 1,000 students and won a legacy belt. I think Fight Matrix had me at the rank number 6 as a flyweight, number 22 as a bantamweight. So a lot of success outwardly, but man, behind the scenes, my life was crashing, and ended up separated from my family, facing a divorce, and attempted to take my life. And the suicide rate is, at the times, 23 a day, and so I almost became a veteran suicide statistic. And some amazing people came around me and helped me. One was my wife, Kathy, this mentor, local guy here. At the time, he was a small business owner, elder on call, who happened to be on call at the church my wife was going to. His name is Steve Toth. He's a Texas state legislator now in the area, where we are now, and I guess where you live too.
Yep.
Yeah. So amazing guy, and so he stepped into my life and began mentoring me. Led me in a relationship with Christ. I became a Christian, and so I had this restoration of my faith, and it's a pretty radical change happened in my life, and I became very intentional about getting healthy again and getting well, and making better decisions in response to things I dealt with. I mean, some bad things that happened to me. I lost 15 friends over those deployments. Even before the military, just my childhood, different things. I had a lot of stuff that was valid, but that to deal with, but the way I was responding was not the right way, right?
Sure.
So I kind of came to this realization, like, yeah, some bad things happened to me, but the reason I ended up sitting in a closet with a pistol in my hand trying to take my life wasn't because of those things. It was because of choices I had made in response to those things. And so I made a pretty radical decision that I was going to, pull my life together, and that's when Steve stepped in, and that deliberate, intentional living and pulling my life together, brought restoration to my family, in my own brokenness and the way I dealt with PTSD, and gave me hope again. And ultimately, it ignited a purpose inside of me, and that purpose really manifested in this kind of deep burden that I believe God put in my heart to help others that were struggling like me. And I kind of looked at my life and said, man, I got the ability to broadcast this message to other people that are hurting. I have a platform as an athlete. I have a lot of influence in the military community because of the special operations background I had, and people will listen to me. I knew a lot of people still, and I had this. It was just this moment in my life where I felt like I was just dying of cancer, and then somebody gave me the cure, and I had a megaphone to be able to shout out the cure. Yeah, like I couldn't keep it to myself. I had to share it. I had to share it, and so I made a decision to kind of just walk away from the life that I had and to pay that what was done for me forward to others. And that was a pretty radical decision I made. At the height of my MMA opportunity, I'm at the prime age to do I probably could have. I felt like I could have been in that first 4 UFC flyweights. I'd never lost a flyweight.
And at that time, the flyweight division of the UFC was kind of fledgling. Like it wasn't deep at all.
No. That was right at the 4-man tournament. I truly believe like there wasn't anybody in the world that could beat me at 125 pounds, and I still believe that. It was at that time I would have ran through anybody. I felt like I was cheating when I fought at 125 pounds.
Well, no one knew jiu-jitsu like you, so that helps. So
for
sure.
I mean, like any it might sound arrogant, but like Demetrius Johnson, like Ian McCall, like all those guys, I'm like, I just felt like no problem. So like I had this, and every fighter should feel that way. By the way,
sure, that's right. That's right. I was going to say, you never hear a fighter go, man, I hope it goes my way. Honestly, yeah.
So I mean that's just so I was in this moment where I believed in myself. I had the opportunity. I had this 1,000 students in my school, but I had this opportunity to just do something bigger than that.
Sure.
And realizing that all these guys from the military community at the time were killing themselves 23 a day at the time, 80% divorce rate. It's kind of like you sit back and say, someone's got to do something about this. Why not me?
Sure.
And so I knew if I would have did it while I had the gym and everything, it would have been like a dabbling, and I had this security net. So I chose to walk away from that gym and everything and to go off and start Mighty Oaks and just go to step out on blind faith and do it.
And that was 2012, right? When you founded Mighty Oaks?
2011.
11, okay.
Yeah.
What was your wife's response when you were like, hey, I know things are going pretty good. I'm going to not do that anymore and do this?
Well, she's a very strong, Christian woman, and she had really strong faith. And so me saying and her believing that I really felt like God was burdening my heart to do this, she was on board at first.
Yeah.
But then the reality of selling our home,
sure,
liquidating everything we own to start this nonprofit. We're going to move to Colorado because that's where I felt like called to do it. And we don't even know how we're going to buy groceries much to start a nonprofit. Like, that became scary to her. And she had this kind of own personal moment, and it would be a long story to go into it, but she had this personal moment with where I believe God revealed some things to her that she was like, came to her own conclusion that she was on board too.
Yeah, that's the right thing.
Yeah, we just both had this kind of blind faith, and we had no idea what was going to happen or how we were going to do it. We just knew we were supposed to do it, and we were just obedient to that calling that we had inside of us. And it was 12 years ago. It's been an amazing 12 years to watch how things have happened in what I believe to be a divine and miraculous way. From a business standpoint, that just kind of defies all business sense to end up where we are right now.
And I'm sure you keep stats on it. How many veterans have you enrolled in the Mighty Oaks program and helped?
So over the last 12 years, we've in our resiliency program, which is where we go to bases around the world and speak to active duty troops. I've spoken to 400,000 active duty troops in those resiliency programs that we do. I've written several books, and one of them is called The Path to Resiliency, which is about spiritual resiliency. We've given away about 300,000 copies of those to the troops. We have a recovery program called a legacy program, and we have 5 ranches around the country. And so active duty service members will go there on orders for 5 days, or military veterans will go there, first responders or spouses of those, and we pay for everything, including their travel. It's about $5 million a year in programming.
Wow.
And so in the last 12 years, we've had 4,500 graduates from that program, and then about 500 of those have become instructors to do that in their own communities that we've trained to do that. And but even though we've done 4,500 over 12 years, now we're at the point we're doing 1,000 per year.
Oh, wow.
Now, so we've really kind of amplified our capacity and ability just through building our infrastructure, and then on the policy side, that's kind of our third of 3 or 4 things we do, because we had so many successes in faith-based programs. I was appointed as the chairman of the White House's Faith-Based Coalition and Change Veterans Policy to get faith-based programs back as an option to the veterans community, because in 2009 there was an executive order signed by President Obama to reallocate faith-based program funding to clinical, and it was a massive catastrophe. Suicide rate spiked from 16 to 23 a day after that, in 2 years after that. So I was
it's at 22 now, right?
Right now, the current report is actually 17.
Oh wow, that's great.
But it's good. But there's data that's coming out now that show that that's actually at about 44, which we always knew there was missing data.
Oh wow.
There was only about 50%. So that's the report says 17, but it's actually probably about in the 40s. 1 is too many.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't really matter what the number is to me. But who knows what? And then they're not reporting a lot of things. Like the National Suicide Hotline is one thing that we do know. And in the last 2 years, that's went up 1,000%.
Oh man!
In 2 years, COVID has
so it happens to correlate with COVID, right?
Yeah. So when President Obama took that out, I was really an advocate for putting that back in, regardless of who's in the White House. And at the time, President Trump was running as a candidate, and I had a chance to ask him any question I wanted. I was put before him as a veteran, and I asked him if he became president, would he overturn this? And that was my one question I could ask him. That's the question I asked, and he said yes, and I was able to follow up on that. And be on the VA transition team, and ultimately be on that as the chairman of the White House's faith-based coalition, and get him to sign that executive order and change some policy, and we got that back for the veterans community.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
And then the fourth thing we do is our international program, and that's where we go to our ally partners around the world. And we've been all over the world to different allies and bringing the same programs we have for U.S. troops, making it available to them. And currently,
I didn't have any idea that actually active duty would end up being sent to the ranches on orders. And that's awesome. How did you end up securing that partnership?
Relationships.
Sure.
Everything we've done over the last 12 years has been relationships. So I had a sergeant major that was in charge of the Marine Corps Wounded Warrior Battalion at the time, and we were only dealing with veterans. And as we were dealing with veterans, we were just like, and this is early on, this is like 2 years into Mighty Oaks, I'm like, man, looking at these guys and what they're dealing with, if we could catch them when they're transitioning out, because at the time the suicide rate was only 1 a day on active duty, but when they were getting out, there was another 20 plus a day. Like, that means we got to catch them before. And so the Marine Corps Wounded Warrior Battalion was where they were transitioning. And so I went to the sergeant major and I said, hey, will you just trust me? Send me 2 Marines, and just trust me with it. And so he went out on a limb and sent 2 Marines to us on active duty. Actually, he sent 3 Marines and a Navy corpsman. And it was, they were phenomenally impacted.
Wow.
Went back, and then they sent more, and then we went to other branches of service and said, hey, the Marine Corps is doing this. Can you send some of your guys? And then now we have all 4 branches have sent people to us on official orders, and I'd say out of that 4,500 graduates we've had, about half of those have been from active duty orders.
Man, that's great.
And then our resiliency program came from that, when we're saying, hey, let's not get them into transitioning. Let's go all the way to the beginning and take the same principles we help people recover with and tell them in the front end, if you have these principles and fundamental things in your life in the front end, then you can prevent some of these problems. And that's our resiliency program, is more preventiveness.
Right. So you're saying, we'll instill this in you so that throughout your career you can rely on these, and hopefully it curbs that, right?
Yeah, the military has always had these pillars of resiliency. When I was they keep adding them, right? It was mind, body, spirit. It was 3 pillars, and then there's 4: mind, body, spirit, social, and they're adding more and more now. But really, there's 4 essential pillars. Like, if you have to be a effective warrior and do your job well, and then walk away from it after, you have to be mentally tough. You have to know your job, and you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be mentally tough. The physical pillar is you have to be physically tough, right? You have to be in the military and do the difficult job. You have to be physically healthy and in shape. Socially, you need to surround yourself with the right people. You can't always pick who you work with, but you can pick who you listen to and let influence you. Right. And that 4th pillar is a spiritual foundation. You have to believe in something bigger than yourself. For me, I'm a Christian, my relationship with God, but you should have those all 4 of those pillars. And so we're able to go in at Mighty Oaks in the beginning, and like this weekend I'll be at Marine Corps Boot Camp in Paris Island, and I'll speak to several thousand of those kids and say, hey, you obviously joined the Marine Corps because you want to be a warrior. A warrior's life means being ready and being resilient. And the Marine Corps is teaching you about these 4 pillars of resiliency on a PowerPoint. So let me teach you what they actually mean. Let me talk to you about what it means to be mentally tough and physically tough and socially listening to the right people and having a strong spiritual foundation. How that can truly prepare you to what you're about to endure as a Marine. And as you go and defend our nation and defend people around the world who can't defend themselves and see things and do things that you were never created or meant to see or do, those things that cause people to wind up in a place of veteran suicide or lead them to divorce. Let's prepare you now by having a strong foundation. And so, I put a lot of effort into that. That's why we've spoken to 400,000 active duty troops in that area. And we get so many requests from bases around the world to go and speak to the troops, because, especially right now, because morale's so low and, guys are just struggling with life. And so we're able to go in and talk to them. Man,
that's amazing. And it's so rewarding and obviously something that's so close to your heart and a passion for you. And I think that's one of the things that probably has led to the success of Mighty Oaks and probably eliminating the concern of are we doing the right thing, something that is passionate and you can be passionate about and hang your hat on the end of the day that, man, I'm helping people, we're really impacting lives positively. And so so that's a nonprofit, and so then you decide, man, we fast forward through the nonprofit stuff, and you co-found another nonprofit, Save Our Allies. When did you found that?
Well, during Afghanistan withdrawals, I a lot of Afghanistan veterans were like, "This is not the right thing to do. Yeah, it's not cool. It's not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do for America. It's not the right thing to do for the security of the world, and it's definitely not the right thing to do for our Americans in Afghanistan and our allies. Like, this is political, and and people are going to die, and our world's going to be less safe because of it. And so I selfishly responded to helping my friend because those 8 deployments I originally did." Because of my job in JSOC, I was an AFO, Advanced Force Operator, and I was essentially working in a singleton capacity by myself. And I was assigned an interpreter who ultimately ended up being my teammate and my friend, Aziz. He did all 8 of those deployments with me. We ran around the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan together, and essentially our job was to put our assaulters on target to capture or kill the worst bad guys in the battlefield at that time.
Sure.
And so when you spend time with people 24/7 like that, you become very close. And Aziz not only became my friend, but someone that I would say saved my life, particularly on 3 occasions, but probably every day. Like, don't walk there, don't talk to that person, don't eat that. If you speak right now, they're going to kill us. Like, I mean, he looked out for me and put himself in danger for me. We wasn't out operating. I didn't go to base, and he went back home. I went to his house. I lived in his home. I seen his oldest kids, Mashoud and Mashuda, be born, and played soccer with his nieces and nephews. So he's like family to me. And we had tried for 6 years to get him and his wife and his 6 kids on a special immigrant visa to come to America because he has filled this contract. He had done like 15 years with special operations.
Oh, wow.
And the contract the United States offered these interpreters, 80,000 of them, by the way, with the contract that we offered them was they fulfill their contract to serve in the United States military, and it's a 9-month process for them to get to the United States. This guy who had all this experience had been 6 years in that process. It's a very broken system, and I know a lot of people in Congress and Senate, and I have a lot of close friends in government, and no one can make this happen. And I think it was intentionally set up to lie and betray our allies, which is not good. We have a history. America has a history of doing this. How do people trust us in future wars if we can't keep our word?
Sure.
And so as this withdrawal was happening, I'm like, I have to go get my friend, and I knew a military should be able to do it, but they wouldn't be allowed to. Our government intelligence agencies and friends I have in the CIA and stuff like that, they were like, they had their interpreters there, and they're like, man, I want to get my interpreter. Because of their job, they couldn't. I know a guy that's worked his whole life, Green Beret, Delta Force, CIA ground branch as a paramilitary officer, and resigned his whole career, everything he worked for his life, resigned so that he could participate and go and help. Because he wasn't allowed to in that capacity. So our service members wanted to go and help, but they couldn't. So I decided I'm going to put a small team together of people, all special operations veterans that I knew very well, trusted, had the experience to do this. And we put this 12-man team together to go get Aziz. And as we're planning to do it, one of the guys says, "Hey, that's like 3,500 orphans in this camp that are going to be left there. Let's go get them too." And we kind of paused for a second and said, "Man, we have like over a century of like incredible like special operations experience in this room. We all have the passion, the ability to do this. We have networks and resources. Like, we could help a lot of people. Let's help as many Americans, women, children that are vulnerable, interpreters and their families, Christians that be killed for their faith. Like, let's help as many people as we can." And so after that decision was made, the only way I know how to describe it was just completely like miraculous, because every door that should have been closed was open for us. And I mean, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley's office, gave us permission to land on the airport and start evacuating people. The United Arab Emirates, the royal family, we called them and said, "Hey, will you help? We need a place to bring these people to because they won't have visas. Like, we can't human traffic people out. Like, we need a humanitarian center to bring them to." They said, "Yes, you could use our humanitarian center. Not only that, we're going to give you doctors and food and take care of them, but you can need some planes too. We're going to give you a C-17 plane, which is a big military plane, and pilots." Like, and then I got a call from Glenn Beck, and Glenn Beck's a longtime friend of mine and been supported by Mighty Oaks, and he said, I just went in the air and raised money because I wanted to do something, and I just raised $21 million, and I'm not rescuing people. Like, what, do you guys doing anything? I'm like, yeah, in fact, we are.
Yeah, and so I subscribed to the Blaze, and I remember when that was going on.
Yeah, he was raising money.
I was like, oh, this is amazing.
He ended up raising like $40-something million, and those planes were like $800,000 a piece. And so I just worked with his guy Rudy Atala, and they didn't give us money. They just paid the bill on the planes for us. And so within the first 10 days there, the first day we got Aziz and his family. We got about 180 people. The next day we got like 800. The next day like 1,000. It was all a blur because we felt like we stopped for like 5 minutes or even 30 seconds to sleep. Right. Like somebody's going to die. Yeah, it was that fast. And we had our ground team going outside the wire, getting people. It was all coordinated. Everybody we brought out, by the way, was vetted. Our list was vetted, and then they went to Abu Dhabi where the State Department moved. So we didn't bring anybody unvetted to the United States. Mm-hmm. Our government did. Tens of thousands.
Sure.
But everybody we brought had to be vetted because we're not the State Department.
Right.
And so we had an amazing team doing that process, running our manifest by Joint Chiefs. It was just incredible how everything went perfect. Any one of those things would have went wrong, and we would have had people killed, or we wouldn't have been successful. It would have been shut down. But everything just went perfect. And at the end of that first 10 days, when the Abbey gates blew up and 13 of our service members were killed, and they started welding those gates shut. We didn't know how many people we got out in that 10 days, but we ultimately tallied it up, and we had got 12,000 people out. Wow. And we made a decision in that moment that we couldn't leave. The U.S. military was leaving. The troops were not wanting to leave. It was embarrassing for themselves. I mean, watching them evacuate our embassy, pull down our flag and evacuate the embassy like Saigon. It was terrible, and our troops were. One of the things our troops were forced to clean the airport for the Taliban, clean the toilets, and for the Taliban. It was just so disgusting. We were so mad, but one of the things that we knew is we couldn't leave because the news was saying, and the White House was saying, there was 100 Americans there. Yeah. And I knew being on the ground that there were thousands of Americans still there. And 100 or 1,000, it doesn't matter. Like, the United States has a promise to American people that we won't leave you behind. Not one person. And the world I come from in special operations is like literally we will scorch the earth around an American to get them out, even if we know we're going to lose people. Even that idiot Joe Berdahl, who's a traitor, like we lost people to go get him because he's an American. And that's just the promise that the United States government has to the American people. So I could not consciously leave, and our team couldn't either. We chose to stay. We were flying people out of remote airports through a coalition of a lot of other nonprofits that worked with us, some great nonprofits, not just ours. And we got about another 5,000 people out. When that dried up, we chose to help build evacuation routes through rat lines across the border. All the people had fled to a place called the Panjshir Valley, and the resistance was there. To cross out of there into Tajikistan was this 25,000-foot mountain peaks. The Taliban was everywhere blocking that path out. So treacherous terrain, the enemy. Then there's the Panjshir River, which is a Category 5 rapids river that's ice melt. So it's cold, it's crazy water. And then on the other side of that is not only the Tajikistan military, but the Chinese and Russian militaries were there. So it's like impossible for them to figure out how to get out unless someone went on the other side and came across and built routes out. And that's kind of one of the things that reconnaissance Marines do. Myself and a Marine named Staff Sergeant Dennis Price, who the Marine Corps allowed to come on leave to do humanitarian work, not knowing exactly what we were going to be doing, but they cut him loose. And he came with me, and we went into Tajikistan, and literally for 10 days, every day we did about 90 miles of border reconnaissance, and every night we would swim across into Afghanistan and build routes out for those people and able to provide information for them to safely evacuate Afghanistan. And I mean, like literally within these moments, we were like 30 yards away from the Taliban, and just getting in there and building those routes out to make sure they could safely get out. And I don't know how many people got out through that, but that information was given to the right people, and including some people in our own government who wanted that information but couldn't get it themselves. And so, yeah, and that's kind of how it ended for us in Afghanistan. And now we're in Ukraine, doing the same thing in Ukraine. We rescued myself and one of the guys that was in Afghanistan with us, who kind of led the ground effort and leading our ground effort in Ukraine. Sea Spray, we call him, is kind of his nickname that we call him. And we were able to rescue Benjamin Hall, the Fox News reporter. I personally drove out Pierre, the cameraman, 25-year cameraman from Fox News, his body, to get him back safely to his wife, Michelle, who wanted her husband. Sure. And then we've rescued a lot of people, and now we're bringing our Mighty Oaks team out to the front lines and providing resources, supplies, training, and ultimately, our biggest thing is our spiritual resiliency program for those troops, because they're mentally and spiritually, like,
for the Ukrainian troops.
Yeah, they're hurting, and and they're just trying to defend their homes and their families and their freedom. And most of them aren't professional soldiers; they're just normal everyday people that are just defending their homes and families. Yeah. And,
so one of the themes that as we go through all of the things that you've done, and first of all, amazing, all of it. And I know that you're very humble about all of that, but you have no reason to be. It's amazing. It truly is. I know there are a lot of people that help that be successful.
Oh yeah, that's not me. It's so many people. Yeah.
One of the interesting things, though, even going back to when you were a gym owner and a fighter, and then now at Mighty Oaks and Save Our Allies, you founded all of these things, but you are also actively doing the work. How do you balance that as a founder, as an owner, a president, CEO, whatever you want to call it? How do you balance that activity and still accomplish the administrative tasks associated with running an organization? Because that doesn't not exist.
Yeah.
And those things have to be taken care of. How do you do that? How do you, as a person, how do you say, I'm going to be tactically involved, boots on the ground, but at the same time get the administrative stuff sorted out as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things that it's probably one of the main lessons that I've learned from my experience in life, and I don't think I ever intentionally did it this way, but look backwards, and I've always done it the way, all those things that you talked about, a list of different things I've done, I've always had the same principle, and I've always surrounded myself by really good people.
Sure.
And as a leader, a young leader, I was a very prematurely became a recon team leader at 19 years old, which is not normal. And I just always learned, I think the blessing by being a 19-year-old and knowing that I got like 25-year-old men in my team is like being humble enough to realize I can't do everything. And there's other people on my team, they're going to be better than me at stuff. And you put the right people in the right place and not be so prideful that I want to control everything. And I learned that at a very young age. And so as I transitioned from that to business, I've never had the pride to be so close hold to things, to say this is mine. First of all, like everything I've done, when you have a life of service or running a business, I think one of the first things you have to understand is it's not about you. Like,
sure.
If you run a business for you, then you're never going to be successful. If you run a gym to help make people's lives better, to make them healthier, to make them more confident, to make them be able to defend themselves, if it's about them, then you're going to have a more successful business. In Mighty Oaks, it's not about, I got 500,000 people on my Instagram. I really don't care about that. That platform's a tool for me to help people. I don't care about more followers on my Instagram. I care about helping more people. And so always putting people before yourself is what you'll find the result of that is you're going to actually be the one that's elevated from it. Even though you might not want to be, you can become the most blessed by helping other people. And I've always made my life about, and I say this like with honesty and real humility, like I've always tried to make my life about other people. I just have a servant's heart. I love serving people. When you come over to my house, I'm going to want to give you food. I'm kind of Louisiana hospitality.
What time should I be there?
Yeah, I'm actually getting served tonight. Somebody's taking me out to dinner tonight. That's just who I am. Like, if you come over, like, I just want to serve. Like, that's sure. From the military to like, I just kind of my personality. So like, I think we're all selfish to an extent, but in business, you need to, whether it's nonprofit or for profit, just realize whatever your goal is, whatever your mission statement is, it's not about you. And that's always been a big thing for me. And then go back to that first thing, surround yourself with the right people.
Sure.
Don't be so prideful that you're going to hang on. How was I able to run a $5 million a year operation at Mighty Oaks? That Save Our Allies effort and starting Save Our Allies, that was a $31 million project that we did to save those 17,000 people.
And you stood that up how quickly?
And
it had to be real quick.
Yeah, like, the 10 days for the Afghanistan thing.
Yep.
We stood it up like 2 weeks before that.
Yep.
And then the whole effort was about 3 months long.
Yeah.
So we went through about $31 million in 3 months. And then Ukraine. The reason I'm able to go out there and participate and do these things and lead from the front is because I built a really good infrastructure of amazing people and surrounded myself by the best people by networking and trusting other people with things. I have the most incredible staff from top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
My board of directors or like people that I trust, or I put people in place in my board of directors that I trust are going to hold me accountable to the mission I believe God's put in my heart. Not people that are going to tell me what I want to hear. Sure. People that are going to tell me what I need to hear. My board of advisors are people like a sergeant major of the Marine Corps and a combat of the Marine Corps, congressmen and business owners that are that have like $1 billion businesses, and people that I've just networked with and just have real authentic relationships with that trust me because of, by just being, a person that does what they say they're going to do, like, and have these relationships with people. And then from all the way down to my staff, like our team leaders and our team, like these are people that I could, I could trust to go out and run these programs and then say, hey, he's not doing exactly the way I'd want to do it, but I'm not there. I need to be over here. Right. And there's another rule in business that you never do anything that someone else could do. And so as soon as you have something, even though you like doing that part of your business, if someone else could do it, then you need to have someone else doing it. And you need to be doing something that someone else can't do. So I'm always, and this kind of comes from the special operations community. What makes special operations special? They do things other people can't do.
Sure.
In Afghanistan, we rescued 17,000 people. In Ukraine, we rescued like 300 people. Why didn't we rescue 17,000 people in Ukraine? Because everybody's driving their cars across the border and opening the door and filling it up. Everybody could do that. I want to do what people can't do.
Yeah. I
want to go and get Benjamin Hall when he's in the middle of Kiev when it's under attack, and the United States military and everyone can't go get him. I could do that. And so it's one person, but I could do that. I could get to the very front line and go 2 hours past the border in the Russian territory and identify mass grave sites. Like I could do that. Not everybody could do that. Other people could drive the bus across the border and open their doors.
Right.
So you always do things that other people can't do. In an everyday business environment, at Mighty Oaks, I could go and teach a great class at the program, but I have a whole staff of 65 other guys that could do it.
Sure.
So why am I going to do that? So I think in business, a lot of times we want to be in control of everything. And there's a lot of people that can do those things. And if we put our pride aside, they could probably do them better than us. So,
yeah, well, and I think that's a great lesson, actually. And it's the first time I've actually heard it put that way, that once you identify this is a need in the business and it's something that I can do, even if I like doing it, if someone else can do that more effectively, it frees you up to drive the business the direction it needs to go. I think that's fantastic. What of all of the things that you've done, and I want to get into the new book that's coming out in January, right?
Yeah.
But of all of the things, before we get there, of all of the things that you've done, and it's for me to sit and listen to, it's just amazing. What are you the most proud of?
Man, honestly, it may sound like me trying to say the right answer, but it truly is my family. Like,
it is the right answer.
Yeah. It's my family. Like I grew up in a very dysfunctional home and I had the opposite example of what a father should be, and I just didn't grow up with it, and I always desired to be like, one day I want to sit around a Christmas tree, which sounds stupid, and have my wife and my kids and grandkids. That's what I wanted in my life. I didn't want to be a billionaire. I didn't want to have a big, a big business or anything. I wanted to be able to sit around a Christmas tree with a wife and kids and grandkids. That's what I wanted, and I have that right now. I just have my third grandkids on the way. I have a great relationship with all three of my kids. But all three of my kids are married. They're in good places in their life. We have great relationships. Me and my sons work together. They both served in the Marines. They work at Mighty Oaks now. We work together. We travel together. We have hobbies together. They both do jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
My oldest son and I skydive together. Like it's just, for me, that's what I'm most proud of, is been able to have a family that's intact and has good healthy relationship. And honestly, it sounds cliche, and it's like I said, it sounds like I'm saying the right answer. But if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to do the other things I do.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
If I didn't have that foundation, I wouldn't be able to have the other things I do. It gives me the platform to do that. So I have to be, as a wise investor of my time and energy and resources, I have to focus on that to be able to do the other things. So
yeah, that makes sense. And my wife's here with me today. She's hiding and doesn't want to be on camera or mic, but it's the same deal. And not near to the extent that you're talking about, but if I didn't have the support from her to do things like this, or even in my actual job, it'd be almost impossible for me to get it done.
Yeah,
so I agree.
Trust me, my wife's been through 8 deployments. And I hadn't always been the best husband. So I'm not saying this to say that I've been the best husband. I've been a terrible husband. If people take the time to go back and look at my story, I've been a terrible husband at times, and not a great person, coming off the PTSD and dealing with some of the things I dealt with. And so my wife had seen the bad side of that. Now I'm going to go back to Afghanistan and help evacuate people.
Right.
Now that that's done, I'm going to go and we're going to fly into Tajikistan by ourselves and travel 11 hours through the mountains to go unarmed, past the Chinese and the Russians and the Taliban to go help people. My wife's like dropping me off at the airport, and that was not a good conversation. She's like, why are you going to do this? Like, what do you have to prove? And I'm like, man, I want our military to go. They can't, like, but I can. Like, why would I have to? And she's like, you don't have to. And I'm like, what if it was our daughter? Sure. That was going to be raped? What if it was our sons and our family? Like, wouldn't we be praying somebody would come help us? And she got it. And I mean, to have like a family that would support you to go do something like that, even though they don't want you to, it didn't just happen. Like
it's not like you're saying I need to go to the store and get some milk. I mean, you're going into some pretty violent places, so it is remarkable. And one of the things that struck me, and I want to get it kind of into the Saving Aziz book, is I watched the movie on Amazon Prime, Send Me. It's amazing.
Nick Palmisano put it together for us.
Amazing. And I remember one of the things that stuck out to me in that movie was at the comment. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Nick actually, but they were saying that the Special Forces community was texting back and forth, and they were like, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And the decision was, well, are we going to sit here and text about it, or are we going to go fix it? Yeah. And then that was the birth of, well, we're going to go fix it. So, so I want to give you a chance to talk about Saving Aziz in the book, and Aziz is now here in Texas and working for Mighty Oaks and and all of that, and that's amazing. We love that he's here. Tell me about the book and tell me, in open forum, whatever you want to say about it and promote it.
Yeah, I'll say about the book. I want to say one more thing about so. When you said Nick, so it was crazy because the four of us that really were the foundation of it was Sarah Verardo, Nick Palmisano, Tim, and myself. And the way that started was Sarah Verardo and I run Mighty Oaks, she runs the Independence Fund. We had met together doing some policy work in D.C., and she was wanting to help get some interpreters out. I was wanting to get Aziz out. We kind of came together, and she texts Nick, hey, do you want to go to Afghanistan? And I'm on the phone with Tim Kennedy because he's one of the people I called right away because I really trust Tim. I've been knowing him a long time. And hey, do you want to go get Aziz? Because we'd never been talking about it. Let's go get Aziz. And they're in the car together at the same time.
Him and Tim?
Him and Tim.
Oh, wow.
So both of us hit them up at the same time. And so they're like, and so within hours, we bought a plane ticket and going. And, they were just incredible there. And, along the way, there's been some incredible people that come along, but I want to say something to say the heart of all those people is a Sea Spray, who I mentioned earlier, special forces guy and one of our premier government intelligence agencies, just probably one of the most qualified guys on our team to do particularly precision rescue operations. Not probably, he was the most qualified guy. And I was together with him. We've been doing everything. I did 10 trips to Ukraine since February, since the invasion, and he's been with me every time. And we were getting interviewed, and just really just gives the heart of everybody that was involved. He was asked in an interview a question that we always been asked. Why are you doing this? Right. Like, why are you helping these people? You don't know these people. You could die. Like, and you don't even know these people. This isn't your country. Why are you doing this? And he said, kind of what we always say is, because it's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing to do to help people that can't help themselves. And if you can, you should. And then the reporter asked another question that I hadn't heard asked before, and this is his answer. She said, "Is it worth it?" And he said, "It doesn't have to be."
Oh, that's a great answer. Yeah,
and I think that's the heart of everybody that was involved in that. Sometimes we kind of want to put things as, not do things because we're on a scale of is it worth it or not? What's our return on it? It doesn't always have to be. When doing the right thing, it doesn't always have to be worth it.
Yeah, sometimes the ROI doesn't exactly work out when it's the right thing, and that's okay.
That's okay, yeah. Yeah, and that's the heart of that whole effort. And so, I think we captured it in this book, Saving Aziz. I was kind of torn, not torn because I was like, I have to tell this story, but, and how to tell it. There was so many different ways to tell it. And so I just went chronologically, like me and Aziz's, relationship since 2003 when we first met and started working together. We were both young in special operations, and he was my interpreter. And so it's really just our relationship from when we met to working together to why my relationship with him was so important to go get him. And then ultimately the subtitle, right, Saving Aziz, how a mission to help one became a calling to save thousands. Yeah. And it was because of his heart. We were sitting in the Abu Dhabi Humanitarian Center, and I'm sitting with him and his wife and kids, and I just met him for the first time, after the rescue, and met up with him, and we hugged, and we're both crying, and his kids could run up to me, and they're calling me Uncle Chad because they call me Uncle Chad, and I'm crying, and then I'm looking around at these thousands of people that we rescued, and I'm like, Aziz, all these people are here because of you, like because you're so amazing, and we love you so much. We came here to get you, and all these people are here because of you. And he said something pretty profound. He said, we're both strong people of faith, and he said, we had prayed so many years, this 6 years, to get him out, and God didn't answer his prayers to get me out, but I believe that God's timing was perfect, because if I would have got out earlier, then you would have never came here. Sure. But because God waited and let me stay there, you came, and now all these thousands of people, and just shows how selfless he is. And so we go through the whole chronological order of our relationship, but then all the very important policy things that happen. And it's not meant to be a partisan book. I will admit that the decisions that are made that make the administration look good, but it's not meant to be partisan. It's just the truth of what happened. Sure. I wanted to give an unbiased truth of what happened. The Pentagon had the book for 5 months to review it and redact it. So I left the redactions in it. And
so where they redacted is still intact.
It still says black line. It's just black lines over it. So I wanted it to be that way. I wanted American people to see that the Pentagon didn't want certain things seen. And
I think that's important.
Yeah. So it's available on pre-sale now at savingaziz.org or any major book retail outlet. Definitely get it. Get a copy to help us out for this mission, and because it's definitely a cause-based project, and we still have much work to do. And not only that, January 17th, so it's pre-order now. January 17th it'll be out, and we'll say not only that, but it was picked up for a film. So it's already fully funded. Most funds take forever to raise money for it. It was fully funded immediately, upwards of like $26 million.
Yeah, I don't know how it couldn't be. I mean, I believe it's you guys say it in that Send Me movie, but a third of all evacuations were you guys out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, we're second largest evacuation next to the U.S. military, but we've been the largest vetted evacuation.
That's amazing.
And, and it's like I said, there's no way to describe it. It was as divine. And by the way, Glenn Beck wrote the foreword to this book.
Okay, great.
So, and he actually on the audiobook he reads it. So in perfect Glenn Beck voice.
He reads the whole book?
No, he reads the
foreword.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I thought I saw on your Instagram you sitting and doing the audio. Reading.
I was, and I went to dinner. He invited me to Dallas to speak at the Mercury One Gala, and it actually surprised me. And they gave me the Bonhoeffer Angel Award, which was like a huge honor. And so they gave me this award. But while I was sitting down with Glenn, and he's like, "How's the audiobook coming?" Because we were talking about how hard it is to do an audiobook. And I said, "It's good. I just read your foreword." And he's like, "Why'd you read your foreword? Like it's me talking about you." And I'm like, "Well."
You're a busy guy.
Yeah. So he did it, and he read the foreword. So
that's awesome.
Pretty cool.
Well, man, this has been amazing, and I do appreciate you sitting down and sharing your story, and it's truly humbling to sit and talk with you, and what I hope is that when you guys get in your new place out there in Conroe near the house, I come by and maybe let you roll me up or something.
Yeah,
maybe be a good time. But man, thank you so much, Chad, for first of all for everything you've done for our country, for Aziz, for these 17,000 people and more, and then thank you for taking your time with me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.